The biggest mistake I made was not failing. It was comparing my life to everyone else's. The day I finally stopped was the day I found peace. This is that story. Some days stay in your heart forever, not because something big happened, not because the world changed, but because something inside you became quiet. This is the story of that day, the day I stopped comparing myself. For many years, I believed I was behind everyone else. I looked at my friends. I looked at people online. I looked at my family. And every time I looked at them, I felt smaller. Someone had a better job. Someone earned more money. Someone traveled to beautiful places. Someone got married. Someone bought a new house. Someone spoke English better than me. It felt like everyone was moving forward. Everyone except me every morning. I opened my phone before I even got out of bed. I scrolled through photos, smiling. Faces, perfect vacations, new cars, happy. Families, success stories, promotion announcements. People celebrate their lives. I smiled while I looked, but inside, my heart became heavy. I started asking myself the same questions every day. What is wrong with me? Why am I so slow? Why can't my life look like theirs? Those questions followed me everywhere, even when I was eating, even when I was working, even before I went to sleep. I compared my life to everyone else, and every comparison made me lose a little more confidence. I forgot something very important, forgot to look at my own life. Instead, I was busy looking at everyone else's at work. I felt the same. My friend Daniel became the manager. He was only 1 year older than me. Everyone congratulated him. I smiled. I shook his hand. I said, "I'm happy for you," and I really wanted to be happy. But later that night, I sat alone in my apartment. I turned off the lights. I looked out the window, and I cried, not because Daniel did something wrong. He worked hard, he deserved it, I cried, because I believed his success meant my failure. I thought there was only one place, at the top. If someone won, I must have lost. That was how my mind worked. Slowly, quietly, every single day. A few weeks later, another friend started her own business. People shared her photos. They wrote kind comments. "You are amazing and so proud of you. You inspire us." I pressed the little heart button. Then I closed my phone, looked around my small apartment. Old table, old chair, old curtains, old dreams, everything suddenly felt too small. I started thinking that maybe I wasn't good enough. Maybe I wasn't smart enough. Maybe I had already missed my chance. Those thoughts became louder every day. One evening, my mother called me. She asked, "How are you?" I answered the way I always did. "I'm fine." She became quiet. Then she said softly, "You don't sound fine." I laughed, a little tired. She didn't believe me. Mothers often know the truth before we say it. She asked, "Are you eating well?" "Yes." "Are you sleeping well?" "Yes." "Are you happy?" I didn't answer. The silence told her everything. She didn't try to fix me. She didn't give me advice. She simply said, "You don't have to become someone else." Her words stayed with me, but I didn't understand them. Not yet, because every day I was still running a race that nobody asked me to join. Every morning I compared. Every afternoon I worried. Every night I felt tired. One Saturday, I met Daniel for coffee. He looked happy, confident, relaxed. Exactly how I imagined successful people looked. He smiled when he saw me. It's been a long time. We talked about work, life, family, simple things. Then he asked, "How are you really?" Again I heard the same question. This time, I couldn't hide, sighed. "I feel like everyone is doing better than me." He looked surprised. Then he laughed, not because he wanted to hurt me, because he couldn't believe what I had said. "You think that?" I nodded. He looked down at his coffee. Then he smiled sadly. "I've been comparing myself to someone else, too." I stared at him. "You?" He nodded. "I compare myself to our company director." I blinked. The director? Yes. I always think he is smarter. He earns more. He has more experience. He seems more confident. I keep asking myself why I'm not like him. I didn't know what to say. For a moment, everything became quiet. The manager compared himself to the director, and maybe the director compared himself to someone else. Where did it end? Did anyone ever feel enough? Daniel looked at me. We all think someone else has the perfect life, he smiled gently. But we only see the outside. His words stayed in my mind all weekend. Only the outside. That night, I opened social media again. Beautiful pictures, happy smiles, perfect moments. Then I remembered something. Nobody posts their lonely nights. Nobody posts their silent tears. Nobody posts the fear they feel before sleeping. Maybe I wasn't comparing my real life to someone else's real life. Maybe I was comparing my real life to everyone else's highlights. For the first time, I wondered if my comparison had never been fair. Maybe I had been measuring my whole life against someone else's best moments, and maybe that was the beginning of something changing inside me. Not a big change, not yet, just one small question. What if I had been looking in the wrong direction all this time? The question stayed with me for many days. What if I had been looking in the wrong direction all this time? I did not have an answer, but for the first time in a long time, I stopped blaming myself for one evening. That small pause felt different. On Monday morning, I woke up before my alarm. The room was quiet. The sun was just beginning to rise. I picked up my phone. My thumb moved toward the social media app. Then I stopped. I put the phone back on the table. Instead, I opened the window. Cool air came into my room. I stood there for a few minutes. I listened to the birds. I listened to the sound of people walking outside. The world was moving slowly, and for once, I wanted to move slowly too. When I arrived at work, everything looked the same. The same office, the same desks, the same computers, the same people. But something inside me felt a little different. Not happier, not stronger, just quieter. During lunch, my coworkers talked about their plans. One was going to Japan, another had just bought a new car. Someone else was saving money for a bigger apartment. Usually, I would compare my life with theirs. I would think about everything I did not have. But this time, I simply listened. I smiled. I asked questions. I was happy for them. Then I noticed something interesting. After everyone finished talking, one coworker became very quiet. Her name was Emma. She looked tired. I asked softly, "Are you okay?" She smiled. "I'm fine." It was the same answer I always gave. I looked at her. "You don't have to pretend." She looked down. After a few seconds, she whispered, "I feel like everyone else knows what they are doing." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because I had thought the same thing only yesterday. She continued, "I keep comparing myself with everyone here. I think I'm the slowest person in the office." Her words sounded exactly like mine. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then I said, "I thought I was the only one." She looked surprised. "You?" I nodded. "I compare myself every day." She smiled sadly. "So we're both doing the same thing." We both laughed quietly. That afternoon, I realized something important. Comparison is often silent. People do not talk about it. Everyone smiles. Everyone says they are fine. But inside, many hearts are carrying the same heavy feeling. A few days later, I visited my parents. My father was working in the garden. He was planting small flowers. I watched him for a while. He worked slowly. He did not hurry. When he finished, he sat beside me. We looked at the garden together. He pointed at two plants. One was tall, the other was much smaller. He asked, "Which one is growing correctly?" I looked at them. "The tall one?" He smiled. What about the small one? It looks healthy too. He nodded. They are different plants. They grow at different speeds. If I become angry because this flower is not as tall as that tree, I do not understand nature. I stayed quiet. Then he looked at me. People are like that, too. His words entered my heart very gently. Different plants, different seasons, different speed. I had never thought about life that way. I had been asking my flower to become a tree, and then I blamed it for failing. That evening, I took a long walk alone. The streets were peaceful. Children were playing. An old couple walked hand in hand. A young man was running. A little girl was riding her bicycle for the first time. Everyone was moving, but nobody was moving in the same way. Nobody was walking at the same speed. Nobody seemed worried about that. Only I had been trying to force everyone into one race. I found a small park. I sat on a wooden bench. There was an old man feeding birds. After a few minutes, he smiled at me. Beautiful evening. Yes, we watched the birds together. Then he asked, "What are you thinking about?" I answered honestly, "I feel like I'm behind in life." He nodded slowly. I used to think that too. He threw a little more bird food onto the ground. The birds came closer. Then he said, "When I was young, I wanted to become rich before I was 30. I failed. I thought my life was over. I became rich when I was 52. He smiled, but by then I had learned something. I waited. He looked at the sky. The best things in my life came late. My wife, my children, my peace, my wisdom. If they had come earlier, I would not have been ready. His words stayed with me. Maybe late did not mean lost. Maybe slow did not mean failure. Maybe my story was simply following a different path. That night, I opened an old box in my apartment. Inside were notebooks from many years ago, photos, letters, small memories. I found a notebook from school. Inside, I had written a dream. I want to speak English confidently. I smiled. Back then, I could only write a few simple sentences. Now I could understand books. I could watch videos. I could have simple conversations. I was still learning, but I had improved. Why had I forgotten that? Because I was too busy looking at people who spoke better than me. I never looked back to see how far I had already come. I turned more pages. There were old goals. Some had come true. Others had changed. Some were no longer important. I realized something. That made me smile. 10 years ago, the person I used to be would be proud of the person I am today. But today's version of me could only see what was missing. I had become blind to my own progress. I closed the notebook and whispered, "Thank you." Not to anyone else, to my younger self, the one who kept going, the one who made mistakes, the one who never completely gave up. That night, before going to sleep, I wrote one sentence on a small piece of paper. Compare yourself only with the person you were yesterday. I placed it beside my bed. I knew I would forget. Old habits do not disappear in one day. But maybe one small reminder every morning could begin changing the way I look at my life. And without realizing it, I had already taken another small step toward the day I would finally stop comparing myself with everyone else. The next morning I opened my eyes and saw the small piece of paper beside my bed. Compare yourself only with the person you were yesterday. I read the sentence slowly. Then I read it again. It was only a few words, but they felt different every morning. Made a quiet promise to myself. I will practice this. Today. Not forever. Not for the rest of my life. Just for one day. That made it feel possible. As I walked to work, I noticed something I had ignored for years. The trees along the road were different. Some were very tall. Some were still small. Some were full of green leaves. Others had only a few branches. Yet none of them looked worried. None of them seemed to ask, "Why am I not like that tree?" They simply grew little by little, day by day. I smiled, Nature never rushed, only people did. At work, Daniel invited me to lunch again. We walked to a small cafe near the office. As we waited for our food, he asked, "How have you been?" I smiled. A little better. What changed? I thought for a moment. I stopped looking at everyone else's life all the time. He nodded. That helps. Still compare myself sometimes. So, do I? He admitted. I don't think comparison disappears completely. Then what do? He took a sip of his coffee before answering. We notice it, and then we let it go. His answer was simple, but simple answers are often the hardest to practice. That afternoon, something unexpected happened. Our manager announced that a younger employee had been promoted. Everyone applauded. A few weeks earlier, I would have gone home feeling defeated. I would have asked myself the same painful questions. Why not me? What am I doing wrong? But this time, another question came first. What can I learn? The difference was small, but it changed everything. Instead of feeling jealous, I became curious. After work, I congratulated him. He looked surprised. "Thank you," he said. Then he laughed nervously. "Honestly, I'm scared." "You are?" He nodded. "I don't know if I'm ready." I stared at him. From the outside, he looked confident. From the inside, he was afraid. Again, I remembered something. We only see the outside. Everyone is carrying something we cannot see. Some people carry fear. Some carry sadness. Some carry loneliness. Some carry pressure. Many people wear smiles over heavy hearts. That evening, I deleted one social media app from my phone. Needed space to hear my own thoughts again. The first few days felt strange. Whenever I had a free minute, my hand reached for my phone. Then I remembered. There was nothing to check. Instead, I looked around me. I noticed the sky. I noticed the people walking past. I noticed my own breathing. Life had always been here. I had simply been looking at a screen instead. One Saturday morning, I decided to visit a nearby hill. It was not famous, not beautiful enough for travel magazines, just a quiet place where people liked to walk. The climb was slow. Halfway up, I became tired. A young runner passed me easily. For 1 second, the old habit returned. Look how fast he is. Then I smiled to myself. He is running. I am walking. We are not doing the same thing. I kept climbing, slowly, step after step. When I reached the top, I sat on a large rock. The view was peaceful. The city looked smaller from above. Cars moved like tiny toys. People became little dots. The problems that had filled my mind every day suddenly felt smaller. 2. A little girl stood nearby with her father. She pointed toward the sky. "Dad, look." A bird was flying above us. It did not fly as fast as the others. One wing seemed a little weaker, yet it kept flying. The little girl smiled. It didn't. "Stop." Her father smiled too. "No, it flies in its own way." Those words touched my heart. In its own way. Maybe that was enough. Maybe I did not need to become someone else. Maybe I only needed to become more fully myself. When I returned home, I opened my old notebook again. This time I did not look at the unfinished goals. Instead, I made 2 lists. On one page I wrote things I cannot control. Other people's success, other people's opinions, other people's money, other people's timing, the past, the future. Then I turned the page. I wrote things I can control, my effort, my attitude, my kindness, my learning, my health, my honesty, my time. The second list was much shorter, but it felt much lighter. I realized that I had spent years worrying about the first list. Very little time had been spent on the second. From that day, I tried something new. Every evening before bed, I asked myself only 3 questions. What did I learn today? Who did I help today? Did I become a little better than yesterday? Some days my answers were small. I learned one new English word. I smiled at a stranger. I stayed calm during a difficult conversation. Other days, I had no big achievements at all, but I still answered honestly. I kept going. Slowly, something beautiful happened. My confidence did not return all at once. It returned quietly, like the morning sun, almost impossible to notice at first, but brighter every day. One afternoon, Emma stopped by my desk. She smiled. "You seem different," I laughed. "Different? You look peaceful?" I thought about that word. Peaceful. Nobody had ever used that word to describe me before. I smiled. "I think I'm finally learning something." "What?" I looked out the window before answering. "My life doesn't have to look like someone else's to be meaningful." Emma smiled. I needed to hear that. As she walked away, I realized something else. When we stop comparing ourselves, we not only help ourselves, we also permit other people to stop comparing themselves. Peace can spread quietly, just like fear can, just like kindness can. And for the first time in many years, I no longer felt like I was losing a race, because I finally understood something that had been true all along. There had never been a race. There were only people, each is living a different story, each is walking a different road, each is growing at a different speed. And maybe that had always been enough. A few months passed. Life did not suddenly become perfect. I still had difficult days. Sometimes I saw someone else's success and felt that old pain. Sometimes I wondered if I was moving too slowly. Sometimes I questioned myself again. But something had changed. Those thoughts no longer stayed for hours. They no longer stayed for days. I noticed them. I smiled, gently. Then I let them go. One rainy afternoon, I found myself sitting in the same cafe where Daniel and I had talked months before. The rain tapped softly against the window. People walked by with umbrellas. Some hurried. Some walked slowly. I wrapped my hands around a warm cup of coffee. Then I noticed someone sitting alone near the window. It was a young man from my office. His shoulders were low. He looked tired. He looked exactly the way I used to look. A few minutes later, he walked over to my table. "Can I sit here?" "Of course." For a while, neither of us spoke. Finally, he sighed. "I don't think I'm good enough." His words felt familiar, almost like hearing my younger self speak. I asked quietly, "What makes you think that?" He looked down. "Everyone around me is doing better. They learn faster. They speak better English. They are more confident. I feel left behind." I listened carefully. I did not interrupt him. When he finished, I smiled gently. "A few months ago, I said almost the same words." He looked surprised. "You?" I nodded. I believed everyone else was ahead of me. "So, what changed?" I looked outside at the falling rain. "Then," I answered slowly, "I stopped asking why my life didn't look like theirs. I started asking how I could take one small step today." He stayed quiet, so I continued. "Comparison looks at distance. Growth looks at direction. You don't have to move fast. You only need to keep moving." He smiled a little. It was a small smile, but I remembered how important small smiles can be. Before we left, I wrote something on a paper napkin. It was the same sentence that had been beside my bed for months. "Compare yourself only with the person you were yesterday." I handed it to him. He folded it carefully and placed it in his pocket. Maybe those words would help him. Maybe they wouldn't. But they had changed my life. That evening, I walked home through the light rain. I did not rush. The streets shined under the city lights. Everything looked calm. Everything looked simple. I suddenly remembered the person I used to be, the person who cried alone after seeing someone else's success, the person who believed he was always behind, the person who forgot to celebrate his own progress. I wished I could go back and sit beside him. I would not give him a long speech. I would simply say, "You are doing better than you think." You cannot see it yet, but one day you will. Of course, I could not change the past, but I could be kinder to the person I was today. That was enough. A few weeks later, I opened my old notebook one more time. This time, I added a new page. At the top I wrote, "My own journey." Under those words, I listed simple things that made me proud. I kept learning English. I became more patient. I worried less than before. I listened more carefully. I spent more time with my family. I slept better. I smiled more often. None of these things would appear in a social media post. None of them would make strangers say, "Wow," but they mattered. They mattered because they were changing my life. From the inside, I finally understood something that had taken me years to learn. Success is not only about money. It is not only about a better job. It is not only about owning more things. Real success is waking up without feeling that you must become someone else. Real success is looking at your own life with gratitude. Real success is walking your own path with peace. One Sunday morning, I returned to the park where I had once watched the old man feed the birds. The same bench was there, the same trees, the same open sky. I sat quietly. A little boy was learning to ride a bicycle. He fell. His father helped him stand. The boy smiled and tried again. He fell again. Then he laughed. He did not compare himself with children who already knew how to ride. He simply kept practicing. Children often understand life better than adults. They do not expect perfection. They only expect another chance. Watching him made me smile. Growth had always looked like this: trying, falling, learning, trying again. The wind moved gently through the trees. Closed my eyes for a moment. I took a slow, deep breath. For the first time in many years, there was no race inside my mind. There was only this moment, only this quiet morning, only this grateful heart. I realized something beautiful. The day I stopped comparing myself was not the day I became more successful. It was not the day I earned more money. It was not the day everything became easy. It was the day I finally accepted that my life did not need to look like anyone else's. That simple truth gave me something I had been searching for all along: peace. If you're listening to this story today, maybe you have compared yourself with someone. Maybe you believe you are too late, too slow, too ordinary. Maybe you feel that everyone else is moving ahead while you stay in the same place. If that is how you feel, I hope you will remember one thing: flowers do not bloom on the same day. Trees do not grow at the same speed. The sun rises without competing with the moon. Nature never asks to, lives to be the same. Why should we ask that of ourselves? Your journey is your own. Your timing is your own. Your story is your own. Take one small step today, then another tomorrow. One day, you will look back and realize something wonderful. You were never behind. You were simply walking your own path. And sometimes, the most beautiful journeys are not the fastest ones. They are the ones who teach us to become grateful for every single step. Thank you for walking this journey with me. And if today is the day you decide to stop comparing yourself, I hope it becomes the beginning of a quieter heart, a gentler mind, and a life that finally feels like your own.